I want to bring in Robert John Ford. He's a playwright and composer. His show Caucus the Musical has been presented every presidential election year since 2004. Robert?
Senator, many Democrats that I've spoken with agree that the primary objective for 2020 is to nominate the candidate that has the best shot of defeating Donald Trump. Some have also said that, given what occurred in 2016 and the current political climate, that a male nominee will have a better chance this time around than a female nominee. Would you please respond to this so that this man has a response ready the next time a man tries to mansplain why a man would make a better nominee?
Well, my first response, Robert, is this, which is that the person who presented that point really is not giving the American voters enough credit. They're smarter than that. The people who vote, the people who live in this country are smarter than that. They're going to make decisions based on who they believe is the best leader. They're going to make decisions based on who they believe is speaking truth, who is doing it in a way that gives people dignity, doing it in a way that elevates public discourse as opposed to bringing us to the lowest common denominator and base instincts. That's how the voters are going to vote. And that is going to be the basis upon who will win. And as far as I'm concerned, listen, I mean, in my entire career, I've heard people say, when I ran and ran as the first woman who would win, it's not, people aren't ready, it's not your time, nobody like you has done that before. I haven't listened, and I would suggest that nobody should listen to that kind of conversation. So, thank you.
A few things on that. In fairness to Kamala Harris, I thought it was a good answer. I'm not going to lie. I thought that was a good answer from her. But I really played that because, what is this, a fucking pillow party? What is this? Is this a serious questioning and challenging of a politician running for president? Or are we having a slumber party? It's absurd! And by the way, as somebody who worked at MSNBC, as somebody who worked for a dark time in my life at Fox News, all of these questions are pre-screened by CNN. So trust me, CNN, they might have thrown out some questions that they didn't want on their air. But, oh my God, you're wasting several minutes of an already short, I mean, it's not a full hour because they have commercials, to have some guy ask about mansplaining? It's ridiculous. Am I being too cynical? And again, I don't actually have anything, I don't have a problem with her answer. The problem isn't with her, it's why are we wasting time in a town hall debate for basically ass-kissing of the candidate, whether it's Kamala Harris or anyone else? Can somebody tell me that?
My question is simple. How do you plan on bringing our men and women home and creating a more peaceful and diplomatic foreign policy?
Yeah, well, we need to bring them home immediately, but we have to do it in a smart way. And, you know, I was in Afghanistan just days before the president made his announcement about withdrawing troops. The concern I have is that we cannot lead public policy, and in particular foreign policy, with a tweet. The concern I have is that we have got to understand that, first of all, in Afghanistan, we have lost 2,300 young lives. Over 20,000 lives have received permanent physical injury, not to mention all of the lives of the young people who have been sent to fight this war, who are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder and all kinds of other injuries in terms of what they are bringing back. And we have got to be more responsible in understanding that we cannot send our young people to fight these senseless wars and these endless wars. But we have to do it in a way that is also smart. And that means that the commander-in-chief has to read the briefing book, has to consult with foreign policy experts and ambassadors and generals and allies, and do it in a way that is smart. Do it in a way that understands that right now in Afghanistan, for example, right when I was there before the announcement went out, there was a whole process of reconciliation happening, where one of the bargaining chips was exactly that point. And so we need to have leadership in our country who makes the right decisions, which includes bringing our troops back, but do it in a way that is smart and strategic and not on a whim and not by a tweet.
I agree in principle with what she said. I think that I'm a little cynical about it only because I've heard this before. You know, I heard this from Obama. We're getting out of Afghanistan. You've heard from a lot of politicians. We got to bring the troops home. Got to do it. How are you going to do it? Well, I'll tell you later. You know, how long? 6 months? A year? How long? I'll get back to you. I will say she did vote against the $715 billion defense bill, which was passed in the Senate last summer. So this is from June. She, along with Dianne Feinstein, Kirsten Gillibrand, Jeff Merkley, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Rand Paul, Mike Lee voted against the bill. I believe Elizabeth Warren voted for it on the final passage, so I'm not positive if she voted for it on the final passage, but she did vote against it on the initial passage. So I'll have to get that.
My question for you tonight is simple. In a society where nearly 1 in 5 children live in poverty, is the existence of multi-billionaires morally defensible?
Well, let's just say this. We have had policies in this country, at least in the last 2 decades, that have disproportionately benefited the top 1% to the exclusion of working families. We have a situation in our country right now where just recently this administration passed a tax bill that benefits big corporations in the top 1% to the exclusion of supporting working families. And that is unconscionable. And you are exactly right. We have babies in America today that are on the verge of starving. We have families that cannot pay their bills. In fact, one of my proposals is that we address this inequity around what has been termed what would be one of the most significant tax cuts for middle-class families in generations. And it is what I propose. I call it the LIFT Act. But what we would do is for families who are making less than $100,000 a year, they would receive a $6,000 tax credit that they could receive $500 a month. Understanding that we have so many families in America right now that are a $500 emergency away from complete financial catastrophe. Let's also understand that we've got to have economic policy in this country that understands that right now it's not working for working people. Right now in America, in 99% of the counties in America, if you are a minimum wage worker working full-time, you cannot afford market rate for a one-bedroom apartment. That is absolutely unconscionable. And so we've got to correct it. And part of it is that people at the top 1%, people who are making $10 million a year, who have $50 million a year, they need to pay more taxes. And what we have to do is correct course. Because for too long, the rules have been working against working families and working for the benefit of the top 1%. We have to correct course.
Whoa, boy. So, listen. Am I against a $500 tax credit a month? No, I'm not against it. Do I think if that is your main overall economic plan, is that enough? No, it is not. That is not enough. Not nearly enough. You know, $500 a month is helpful. It could be very helpful, especially to the poorest of the poor. It could be helpful to anyone. But that's an economic policy that is complementary. But if that is your main economic policy, taxes, we've been having this same tax debate. Basically, not for 20 years, as she said, for 30, 40 years. She's been talking about the lopsided nature of this economy. This has been basically going on 40 years since Reagan, and maybe even a little bit before that. So an extra $500 a month, you know, that's kind of close to like unemployment insurance, right? So $500 a month is not going to in a dramatic, radical way, lift people out of poverty. $500 a month is not going to dramatically lift people, from living paycheck to paycheck. $500 a month, honestly, might just go finally to help people pay off the mountains of debt they have, but it's not going to enriching their lives. It's just chipping away. This kind of argument is not addressing the underlying problem, which is there are not enough actual jobs that pay real wages with real benefits. There are also, which I didn't hear her talk about during this town hall, has been the decimation of labor unions in this country. When you look at it, the overall problem in this country, decimation of labor unions, she didn't address that. The jobs being sent offshore to China, Mexico, and all the other countries around the world, so that Apple and Walmart and GM can basically get away with murder and paying for foreign labor. She's not addressing that. So $500 a month, yeah, it's nice. I'm not going to argue against an extra $500 a month, but that doesn't help the people who have been laid off or their industries and their jobs being sold to foreign countries. That doesn't change the game dramatically for those people. So, I'm just keeping it real. That's not enough of a plan. Maybe she'll come up with a more ambitious economic policy. But as far as I can see, a extra $500 a month, is that what you, the audience, needs to help you stop living paycheck to paycheck? Or is that money going to be spent in a minute paying off debt and student loans and medical bills? So again, is it a bad thing? No. A tax credit for the middle class, increasing taxes on the wealthy is a good start. But I think too long in this country, we've allowed the oligarchs and the politicians to distract us by frankly saying it's about taxes. Amari Jr., 5 real. Is that real? From Brazil. Happy with Bolsonaro, big president. I got to disagree with you there. I think he's a maniac, in my opinion. But I think, we've been distracted just merely by taxes. Taxes going up or going down are not going to fix the systematic problem with this country, the systematic economic rigging in this country. And that rigging is the money in politics, the corporate influence, campaign finance reform, Citizens United, the destruction of labor unions, automation, and zero regulations on corporations being able to offshore your jobs offshore. It should be illegal to give tax cuts to corporations for them then to pay themselves back in stock buybacks. That's giving free money to oligarchs. No. We need to giving money with strings attached. Because you want to know something? If you're giving $500 to middle-class people, you know what they're going to do with it? Spend it right away. Back into the economy. Unfortunately, it's probably the majority of that $500 probably not going to go back into the economy. You know where it's going to go? To paying off their already massive bills piling up of debt. Thank you. So that's what I think of Kamala Harris's town hall. I tried to be fair. I'm not a Kamala Harris fan, but I don't want to just, distort anything. So I tried to be fair. She said some things that I like. Unfortunately, when you look at the context, when you look at her history, when you look at the fact that she did not advocate for single payer in California, when you look at the fact that she takes money from banks, when you look at the fact that she's for a Green New Deal, but she's not banning fracking, when you look at the fact that she's for a Green New Deal, but she's still taking money from Wall Street that's invested in these pipelines, this is what's wrong with our political journalism in this country. We just look at the answers as theater. We react, and the majority of pundits and corporate journalists that cover campaigns, they don't actually address the conflicts of interest from these politicians, the gaping holes in their answers, the context of, wait, she's saying she's for this, but what about her past record? They just say, oh, she really presented herself well. Oh, I think she'll face Trump. She'll line up with Trump really well. It's all theater. It's all basically like it's like they're judges, at a competition, and they're not offering you the context and the important information you need about their records to make an informed decision. One more thing. Did you notice what was not asked by CNN? How in the world do you have a town hall with Kamala Harris and you don't ask, hey, Kamala Harris, why, when you were Attorney General of California and your prosecutors under you investigated Steve Mnuchin's One West Bank for a full year and found he had multiple violations to foreclosure law, including not giving enough notice to those he was foreclosing on and other violations, and your prosecutors recommended to you prosecuting Steve Mnuchin? Why is it that wasn't asked? Could it have anything to do with CNN's former parent company, Time Warner, being Kamala Harris's #1 donor? To be clear, individuals from Time Warner, not Time Warner, the company, but individuals who work for Time Warner, who donated to her 2016 Senate campaign to the tune of $127,975. So I'm highly doubtful that 639 average worker bees who don't make a lot of money at Time Warner donated $200 to Kamala Harris, because that's how much it would have been. If 639 people who work for Time Warner donated $200 to Kamala Harris' Senate campaign, that gets you to $127,975. And the FEC, the minimum donation amount is $200 that you have to actually file with the FEC. Or the candidates, have to file with the FEC, $200 donations. So, you really think 639 average worker bees not making, big bank money at Time Warner were like so inspired by Kamala Harris's campaign that they donated?